Hello and welcome to LakeView Listens. This is LVLC's monthly podcast. Each month we are here to provide space for experiences, ideas, and people that have significant impact on our communities, however large or small. Through these conversations we hope to inspire, empower, and enlighten you, the listener. I'm your host, Zachariah Schmidt, on staff at LVLC. Today I'm here for episode 7 with Mr. Robert Sims. Robert, I'm so excited you're here. I haven't seen you in some years now, and I'm just very honored that you're here. If you don't know Robert, you should. He's sung at LakeView several times over the years, not in some years, but is a very familiar character at LakeView Lutheran. An incredible vocalist, I think one of the most incredible vocalists in the country, and just really a wonderful human being on top of that. You can check him out at robertsims.com, and he's just a great guy. Give you a little pitch there to open up. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. I'm really honored and excited for today.
I'm happy to be here, and I've known you for quite some time. My fondest memory, there was an African-American folk song, A Great Day, that was written for me, and I would practice it at your house, and you'd hear me, and one day you learned it and came down and sang it for me. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
And I will never forget that, and I was just so thrilled. So anytime Zach calls, here I am.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about that on the way over. Just that exact memory. Little white boy coming and singing an African American spiritual for you, and I just have listened to your music since I was a little boy, and again, just very happy to be here with you.
That's so funny. I didn't see you as a little white boy. I just saw you as Zach, which is interesting because we're in such a polarized world that we see color. And sometimes I forget, not often, but I didn't see that with you. I just saw, just the love of music and this little guy that, wanted to do it. And now here you are, a very fine musician. And how fantastic, how great, yeah.
Good. So another thing that I was just sort of thinking about on my way over here is this is our 7th episode, and so we've had six guests on, and I think there's only been one other person who actually grew up in Chicago and who was born and raised in Chicago, and so I think you're just the second person who is born and raised in Chicago.
Well, born here. At about 3 months old, there was a migration of people leaving Chicago going to California. So my parents went to California when I was about 3 months old.
Okay.
And I did elementary school and junior high school there. But I came back, I think, 7th grade here in Chicago, Diet Middle School, which coincidentally now is maybe about 3 blocks from where I live in Bronzeville. And so, and then I did my high school and I guess 2 years of junior high here in Chicago. But my roots are here.
Sure. So we'll say born and sort of raised.
Sort of raised. Well, half of my life, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. Okay.
And then, I've been back here for the last 30 years. So,
Yeah. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about, like you said, you were in California for the first many years of your life, but then being back here for middle school and then kind of onward from there. Can you talk about how you experienced Chicago during that time, especially middle school, high school, beyond that, but really just kind of those first years here?
Well, it's very interesting. I grew up, my grandmother lived on the west side of Chicago. My parents grew up on the west side of Chicago. I guess my dad, when he arrived, he was on the south side of Chicago in the area that I live now. Chicago is a very interesting place because there are many neighborhoods, and I think quite often people don't really leave their neighborhood. When I was growing up on the west side, I really didn't know that there was a lakefront. black people on the west side of Chicago really didn't go past State Street, and we didn't go past really State and Lake. So it's so funny when I got a glimpse of the water past Lake Street and kind of saw Lake Michigan. I thought that was Detroit beyond there. I thought that, I had never gone to the North Shore or never gone past really State and Lake. And then later I found out, there was Michigan Avenue and the Lake Shore. And then I thought Evanston had to be like 3 or 4 hours away from Chicago. I really just stayed in my neighborhood. And it wasn't really until I was an adult that I really started to really discover the greatness and how vast the city really is, and the different cultures. And it's a magnificent city. Growing up, my neighborhood, my neighborhood was very supportive. I had several relatives at that time. That was the time of crack cocaine. So it was kind of rampant in the community, but everyone knew that I was serious about music, and they'd see me going with my little book bag, to my lessons on Saturdays, and everyone supported that. And when I would give recitals, people from the community would come. A very respectful community, as my grandmother, they respected her and would always say hello, a community that spoke to each other when they walked down the street. A warm, loving, fun community. It was much different than California. I lived in a suburb of California, so there were little corner stores that kids could go to get candy and snacks, and we didn't have to go to the big grocery store like we had to go in my suburb of California. So a lot of fun, wonderful times, picnics, family reunions, block club parties during the summer. Just a grand old time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was just thinking this kind of. And obviously I've never lived in the suburbs. I've lived in the inner city.
Yeah, you grew up in the city.
Yeah,
you went to city schools, went to Whitney Young, so you know this city. Yes.
And when I was in Atlanta too, I wasn't living in the suburbs. I was living in the inner city too. But it is such a big difference between living in the suburbs and living in the inner city. I think this really different sense of community. And I think it's something that we kind of underestimate, just the importance of having people next door, people down the street who are so important in our lives, who can be such big supports in times of crisis, in really good times too, but just that kind of build us up and help us to become really solid citizens. Where did you go to high school?
I went to CVS, Chicago Vocational High School, for my very first year, and I was in the CVS Orchestra. But I started taking voice lessons when I was in the 8th grade. And
so that's a little bit later.
Yeah.
Were those were your first voice lessons ever?
First voice lessons, formal voice lessons were in 8th grade.
Yeah.
And probably the end of 7th, beginning of 8th grade. But I didn't know that meant I would be a singer. I always wanted to be a singer, since, as early as I could remember. But not having the vocal talent of a young Michael Jackson, black people, either you can sing. They never heard of voice lessons. Either you can sing or you can't. Did Michael Jackson have voice lessons? No. What do you mean? You want to pay somebody to teach you how to sing? No. You sing or you can't. So that's what they thought in my community. But thank God that there was a woman by the name of Mary Sorensen. She started an academy called the Fine Arts Academy. And she started giving me voice lessons and piano lessons. And not to date myself, but voice lessons were $5 and piano lessons were $5. And I would take both. And then she had a theater class and a theory class. And it was so interesting. I'll never forget this. And this is probably, I don't know if this was where we want to go, but once you get me talking, here it is. She was so wonderful. She wanted to expose me to so many things, and she took me to the symphony, and she did everything. And late, if she would take me to a symphony performance, it would be late at night. And she had an apartment in Lake Meadows on the south side of Chicago. And I would spend the night at her house. She would say, "We'll go to the symphony, and you'll spend the night at my house, and I'll give you a lesson, and I'll take you home the next day," which was really wonderful, and just kind of like adopted me. And I will never forget, one day I was outside playing. I was playing with my friends, and my grandmother was watching me from her bedroom window. And she opened the window and she said, "Bobby, come here." And so I came upstairs, and she looked at me and she said, "Mrs. Sorensen is a white woman and you are a black 12-year-old boy." And I looked at her and I said, "What do you mean? What does that have to, what are you talking about?" "Mrs. Sorensen is a white woman and you are a 12-year-old black boy. Now go back outside and play." And I thought, what is that about? And I guess she just felt the need to tell me that. And in that moment, the world was polarized, and I started to see black and white. I hadn't seen it up until that time. It was just very, very interesting. And maybe she felt the need to tell me that because she knew about Emmett Till. I knew nothing about the Emmett Till story. And maybe she needed to let me know who I was. I guess she said, "This little kid grew up in California. He thinks he's," it was so funny. I watched the Brady Bunch growing up. The youngest boy on the Brady Bunch was Bobby, and my name was Bobby. I thought I was Bobby. I didn't know how the world saw me, but that's how I saw myself. I was the Brady Bunch. It's just so interesting, and how wonderful that I grew up in that way, that I thought everybody saw me as one of them, and my grandmother had to let me know, "You're in this city, Chicago, and you need to start seeing things differently." Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Well, I think as kids, kids don't see that until it gets pointed out. Kids play with other kids, no matter their color, no matter their gender, typically, and we don't put the world into these dichotomies until it really is pointed out to us. Did this teacher, did she come to you? How did you find her, or did she see something in you?
This is very interesting. So my mother loved piano and loved saxophone. So I played the piano by ear. My brother played the saxophone. But this was not supposed to become our vocations. This is just something to keep us busy. So when I was really serious about music, my mom was really kind of against it. So I left my mom and came to Chicago to be with my dad. My parents got a divorce out in California. My father came back to Chicago. My mother stayed in California. We would come to Chicago for the summers, or my dad would come and visit us. And so one year we decided we wanted to stay in Chicago and stay with my dad's family. And my mom's family was here as well. Then a year later, my mom moved back to Chicago from California. So both of my parents are even here to this day. I'm so blessed. I am eternally young, but my dad is 84 years old, and he still takes me to the airport 3 to 4 times a month and picks me up. And so he's like my personal Uber driver. He won't take any money from me, but I always just leave it in his car. And so I just have to leave it in the seat or whatever. And he's there. If I have a 5:30 flight, my dad is at my house like 4 o'clock in the morning, and he's like on it, ready to go. And I just love that. But you were saying, so my mom didn't want me to be a musician, but the choir teacher at my junior high school saw that I loved music, and so she would work with me on her lunch period and all of that. Well, I didn't know that my mom made a private appointment with her and told her, I don't want my son to go into music. Don't encourage him in that. And so then I would show up for my lesson or for her to work with me, at her lunch break or at my lunch break, and so this kind of stopped. I didn't know that they had this private meeting. Well, she said, so that she wouldn't get in trouble, she referred me to a piano teacher and voice teacher that she sent her children to. So now the heat was off of her.
Yeah, sure.
So that's how I found this teacher, Mrs. Sorensen.
Okay.
And so it was great. My mom has come around.
Yeah.
But
I would hope so.
yeah. Hey, what can you do?
Yeah. Right.
So that's how I found this teacher. It was through another teacher. Yeah. And this is so interesting. The teachers in my life, and really I have to say women, Mrs. Sorensen, Mrs. Petty, who's passed. They both have passed away. Mrs. McLean, great composer. There have been so many women who've just poured love and encouragement and wonderful, wonderful ideas about music and technique and just life. I've been so blessed.
Sure. Yeah. That's it's quite something to have not just one teacher, but really a string of teachers, or almost every teacher that is there for your best interests, really looking out for you, opening up your world, seeing your talent, helping you nurture that talent. I think teaching is a really, really hard thing to do. And it's really hard to be a good teacher. And you have so much responsibility and so much power, and it's really easy to kind of screw that up and not do it in the right way. So I can imagine to have your first teacher be so incredible, and then have this string of teachers over the years be really incredible too, was just really, really a profound experience.
It's a huge responsibility for teachers, and I've been blessed. I was never taken advantage of. I was always treated very, very well, and really treated with sincere love. And I've been really, really blessed with that. I know that's not the case for everyone, but for me, that was just a wonderful experience of a pure love of teaching and forgiving and sharing, and just I'm forever grateful.
Yeah. Can you talk some about Miss McLean?
Lena McLean, and she just passed away.
That's right. Was it last year?
It was just last year, yes. Yeah. And we had her services, I believe, in October. Whenever I think of her, as when I think of my grandmother and all my other teachers, I smile because I just feel so grateful that I had them as a part of my life. Lena McLean gave. She gave so much to me. And I was thinking of her today, coming here, because I said, here's Zach, and he wants me to do this interview. And I was like, let me get up here. And I said, oh boy, I have to call Zach and tell him that I'm held up, but I made it. And I just remember Lena McLean, I asked her to do Great Day for me, and she did. I asked her to arrange Don't You Let Nobody Turn You Around for my high school senior recital, and it arrived. The arrangement arrived the day of the performance for the piece. Lena McLean would dictate songs. This was before fax machines and all of that. I'd say, Miss McLean, I need this arrangement. Well, you know what? We'll do it over the phone. And this is when telephone calls were very, very expensive. Okay, measure one. A low E, then put a B. Ms. McLean, an E minor chord. Yeah, an E minor chord, but I want you to space it a certain way. And so we dictate the measures over the phone.
Okay. Yeah.
Until I had the whole piece written out.
Yeah, quite different.
The bill must have cost her $300 or $400, but she did it because I was her student, and she could see I was serious, and she loved me. And so I said, let me get up here to see Zach, because that's what Lena McLean did for me.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was just really wonderful.
Yeah. Well, again, just to have, just like I was saying a second ago, just to have a person like that, have multiple people in your life who are so willing to go above and beyond and just sacrifice so much. It's just a really incredible thing. Yeah.
And Zach, it's really important because when you have self-doubt, which can come to all of us, say, hey, Lena McLean saw something in me. Mr. Sorensen saw something in me. Mrs. Petty saw something in me. I don't care what this review says. These people saw something great in me, and they're great. And if they're great and they saw something great in me, maybe there's something there. Let me put my shoes on and put my shirt on and get on out here and try this again.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, it's a great lesson to try to stick to.
Because life is challenging. Someone said to me, we get the test, then we get the lesson. You know, you fail the test, then you get the lesson.
Right.
Normally you're supposed to get the lesson so you can pass the test. But
Right.
life will test you and you fail, and then you say, what's the lesson?
Sure. Yeah.
It's kind of backwards, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
It'd be great if we got all the lessons and then the test, but that's not how this thing works.
Right.
And then there's another test to see, hey, did you learn it the first time?
Sure.
And then there's another one. And would you end up marrying the same person 3 times? And you say, well, hey, it must be me.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's holding the good with the bad. I think in a lot of these tests and lessons, we get the test and we fail the test, or we succeed. And there's lessons in both of those things. So I think being able to hold both of those things at the same time is a hard but important thing to learn how to do.
And we're in classical music, so there's no improvisation in classical music. And there's a standard of perfection. What a curse.
Yeah.
We go to we go to conservatories and we get degrees on trying to be perfect. And then let somebody tell us we're not perfect. Oh, we can't do what? That's my whole life. I've been to the conservatory to be perfect. And you're going to tell me I'm not perfect?
Right.
You know, the technique I've been working to be, it's a very interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure we could go on and on about this, but just thinking about in that sense, what is perfection? What does that even mean? In what world are you going to have every single note exactly the way that you want it, and is your perfection the same as someone else's perfection? Again, we could talk about that.
Then you get to a certain age where technically you can't do what you used to do. The body just won't do it, and you then recognize that people want to see you, and it's about the spirit that's in the music. It's about it's not about perfection. It's about opening up your heart and showing a part of yourself. That's something we weren't taught in the conservatory. But is that something that somebody can teach you? Someone can sometimes it's interesting because the conservatory, music school, can kind of close your heart.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And maybe you need to close it so you can get the technical skill down, and then maybe you have to open it up again. I don't know. We can train the joy and the love and the heart out of an artist, and then that artist has to go on a journey to find it again.
Sure. I think that's very true. I think I've seen that many times. I think that's all over the conservatory. I think that's all over performing arts, is pushing someone too hard for this ideal of perfectionism, and then experiencing this tremendous sense of burnout. I've had students that were in the studio with me, dear friends, who are not doing music anymore because of that burnout, because of how intense it is, and the focus is maybe not where it needs to be, right? In a conservatory, can be a real sterile setting, right, for sure. Right. Talk about, if you would, after high school, school after high school, and then getting into your career, as it were.
Well, after high school, and I was doing operas in high school, and we got a grant from the Lyric Opera of Chicago. We were doing, my teacher, Lena McLinn, we did a traditional opera, and we did a pop opera that we wrote every year. So she was part of, she developed the curriculum for vocal and music major for the Board of Education. So I really saw her 7 days a week and many hours during that time. It was kind of a old Italian school conservatory setting. So I'd get there at 8 in the morning. Her first class probably wasn't until 9, and I'd have the piano on grand stick, and I'm playing my Chopin preludes and whatever, and not just the easy C minor one. And I was playing number 1 and playing the B flat one. I was, really thought I was doing something. And she'd come in the room and say, "What is the piano doing on full stick? Get off the piano. You need to practice your arias." She would say, "You know what? There are 12 and 13-year-olds that play rings around you. They've been playing for years. The idea of being a concert pianist is not going to happen. You might have a chance being a singer, so, let's start working on your scales and all of that, because, And then others she encouraged in other ways. I mean, because she taught everyone of Jennifer Hudson, R. Kelly, Shaka Khan, Mandy Patinkin. I mean, the list of singers and musicians that have gone there. And she could see Mark Rucker at the Met, and Nicole Heeson at the Met, and Jonita Lattimore. The list of singers, just performers and actors and dancers and pianists. The list is wide. And Lena McLinn could see where she thought your talent would flourish and encourage you in that way. Yeah. And I wanted to be a singer, so that was no problem. We would do an opera every year. I'd see her for vocal major, music, a 4th period. 3rd period was music major, where we learned theory and composition. 5th period was choir, so I saw her 3 periods. And then I saw her after school for opera rehearsal. And then I was in her church choir, so I saw her on Saturdays for choir rehearsal. And then I saw her on Sundays at church. So I saw her 7 days a week. Yeah. And I'm
so it was like a second mother.
Yeah, I was so grateful for that.
Yeah.
And so then there was time for college, and my mom really wanted me, first time away from home, to go to an historically black college. So I went to Virginia Union University. I heard their choir sing and loved it, and loved Odell Hobbs, who was a wonderful musician. And I toured, and that's where I kind of learned the spiritual, through Lena McLinn and Odell Hobbs. And touring with the Virginia Union Choir. Then I met mezzo-soprano Denise Graves at a competition here in Chicago. And after that, she told me she went to Oberlin. And then I heard someone else went to Oberlin. And I started doing some research for the school, about the school. And I think it was July. And so I applied to go there for acceptance in August, and sent my materials in, and they accepted me and gave me a full tuition scholarship.
Wow.
And that changed my life. I loved Oberlin. It was like the land of Oz. Just a wonderful experience. And I started performing in operas there. I got the lead in the opera every semester, so I stayed there 5 years. And having the lead in the opera every semester, I learned 10 opera roles. And then I left there and went to Tri-Cities Opera, which was in upstate New York. And they had a master's program connected to the opera company at Binghamton University. Before it was called Binghamton University, it was called SUNY Binghamton, the State University of New York. I left there, went to Chautauqua, went to the Music Academy of the West in Santa Barbara, and then was offered a scholarship at Northwestern for my doctorate. Went to Northwestern. While I was at Northwestern, I got a contract with the Goodman Theater with Frank Galati in the Kurt Weill. It was called Lost in the Stars, but we retitled it Cry the Beloved Country after the book, the Peyton book. And after that, I got a contract with Opera Carolina. And I was singing with them and living in Charlotte. And then I came back to Chicago for a Ravinia debut. And at Ravinia, I heard about this job at Northern Illinois University. I had nothing coming up after Ravinia. And so I thought, oh boy, let me apply for this job at NIU. And we'll see what happens there. And I could get some insurance and get some glasses and go to the dentist and do all these practical things. And I was kind of bummed because I'm like, oh boy, I'm an academic now. I don't want to be an academic. You know, I'm an artist. And so it's just just failure, you know. You know, I'm an academic. When people want jobs, right? So I took the job, kept all my stuff in a box, thought I'll be out of here in 5 years. 5 years turned to 30. And there I started to focus on my recitals of African American folk songs. And I had to be very active there because it was a part of my scholarship. And so I performed a lot, and they really supported my performing and being away. And so it was wonderful. I had the stability of a teaching job, and they let me go whenever I needed to, and several sabbaticals, and it's been an interesting journey. And I wonder what the journey would have been if I hadn't taken the teaching job. But you know, I did. So you know, here I am, and still making art, still singing. You know,
you've been all over the place.
I've been all over the place, yeah.
And have done a ton of different things in the musical world.
Yes.
You know, you've performed and taught and done everything in between. Sounds like.
And it's not done. You know, I still
Right.
there's still more to do, and I wish I could be okay and say it is finished and I don't have any more, but there's still a drive to do more.
Sure.
So here we are.
Yeah. Right. I wanted to ask you a bit about, you just mentioned being sort of an academic, and that was when your interest in African folk song came out, I suppose.
Yes.
But I also wanted to just ask you about, you know, a lot of your music that I've listened to is African American spirituals and gospel. I just wanted to kind of get your sort of what your experience has been with African American spirituals, gospel, African folk songs.
Well, believe it or not, I don't sing gospel music. If I sing one song, which is Precious Lord by Thomas A. Dorsey. Thomas A. Dorsey was Lena McLean's uncle, and she lived with him. He's the father of gospel music. Before that, he played for Ma Rainey and as a blues musician, you know. And his story is quite interesting. He lost his uh, young wife and unborn child in childbirth, and kind of had a nervous breakdown after that. And that's when he wrote "Precious Lord, Take My Hand." And I kind of sing that song as a standard kind of classical piece. I would say that is really the only gospel song that I've ever sung. Uh, Spirituals are different because we don't know the composers of spirituals. They came out, they're a documentation of the lives of enslaved Africans by enslaved Africans. And so these songs have been arranged for the concert stage, and that's what I kind of specialize in. Gospel music, we know the composers. And gospel is also a style. But so there's a difference in those two genres. Gospel music was very influenced by the blues. The blues is the first cousin of the spiritual. One would say that the blues is the spiritual is secular, and the blues would be. I mean, the spiritual is sacred, and the blues is secular. But it's kind of hard to draw those hard lines when you talk about music in that way. Spirituals, there are a lot of folk songs that one might classify as a spiritual, and there is nothing in that song that is spiritual, that is sacred. What is classified as a spiritual. So, you know, in that whole genre of African American folk songs, we have freedom songs, we have work songs, we have protest songs, we have lullabies. You know, hush little baby, don't say a word, Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird. That's an African American lullaby, probably composed by a woman. Hush you by, don't you cry, go to sleepy little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses. I'm sure you played that for the Blacks and Bays Copeland song. That's an African American lullaby, and these have just been, you know, we call them, you know, American songs, and we don't know, but probably composed by a woman nursing a child or trying to rock a baby to sleep, and an African American woman, you know. But they fall in this whole thing of, instead of calling songs spirituals, I like to call them African American folk songs. I think that is a title that can include all of them. And then gospel is something else, and then blues is something else. There's some folk blues, but then there are also blues that have been written by people. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I was, you know, I've sung in choirs for most of my life, and I sang throughout middle school, high school, college, not as much in the past couple of years, but really for a lot of my life have sung in choirs. And in high school and at university, we, you know, choirs sung on occasion, sometimes more than others. We sang spirituals.
Yes.
You know? And yeah, it's I love singing spirituals in a choir because it's a really profound experience.
Yes.
It's I don't want to say obviously, but I think it probably goes without saying that it's a different experience for me as a white person to sing a spiritual than it is for you to sing a spiritual.
You know, I don't know.
Because I can sort of grasp the gravity of a piece of music when I'm singing it, and I can grasp the kind of the history of it, right? But I'm not, again, as a white person, I'm not descended from the people that were writing this music.
Well, I've never personally been enslaved, and so I don't. You know, maybe it's, you know, yes, a part of my culture. how many generations am I removed from slavery, enslavement. I don't know that I think of it in that way. Maybe it's in my DNA. The language, I can hear how my grandmother spoke and how my relatives spoke, and so that might color how I feel about it. Yes, there's something in me that this music speaks to. I was like, how come hip hop and some other music didn't speak to me in a way that I could have really made some money? Why did it have to be this? But this kind of music really spoke to me for some reason. Could something have spoken to me that would have been a little bit more lucrative?
And let me just jump in to be clear. I didn't mean that a specific kind of music has to speak to you in a certain way. I don't want that to come across.
But what I'm trying to get across is that we have to bring to any art form our experience. So what I know about is being pulled out of my car for no reason and handcuffed and thrown on the hood of my car, and I've done absolutely nothing wrong.
Sure.
That's an experience that I know about. I know how people look at me when I come into a room and they don't expect someone like me to be there because they think that situation is just for them.
Right.
I know what it's like to be looked at as less than.
Sure.
So I can bring all of those experiences, and so can you, and so can many others. So I think when music comes to us, we bring our experience to it, which is what makes it very, very special. Yes, and it's the music that, but the spiritual is in the soil of this country.
Yes, I agree.
And so it's on some level, a part of all of our experiences. So yes, when we choose a spiritual, and maybe there's certain songs that one might want to stay away from. I'm not interested in seeing a white person saying, "Mama, is massa gonna sell us tomorrow?" Sure. Because I'm looking at you, and so, right. I can't really, accept that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for someone who is not African American to sing, sometimes I feel like a motherless child who just lost their parent a long way from home. Their experience of being a motherless child is, of course, different than an enslaved African's experience, because an enslaved African's experience might be being sold. And maybe not knowing who their real mother, they would separate. When a child was born, they would oftentimes take the child away from the mother, so that there was no bond there, right. And there was a wet nurse or an older woman that would raise the children. And so when you're looking at people that have been, treated like animals and breeding animals and sold like property. Part of the reason that you can do that is that you see them as subhuman.
Sure.
And so that person would sing Motherless Child in a different way, and maybe knowing the history might tap into that. But someone who's lost a parent, or someone who's been orphaned, or someone who's been in foster care, or someone who has never known who their parents are. I had an Asian student And she'd cry at every lesson for 4 years. And she'd knock on my door for her lesson like the police. I'm like, who's knocking so loud? And she'd show up early every lesson, and she cried every lesson for 4 years. She wouldn't leave. She wouldn't go get another teacher. She stuck with me. But she was an Asian woman with an interesting last name. And so I said, how did you get this last name? She said, this nurse came to China and adopted me and my 3 sisters. My parents left me under a bridge because she was a girl in China. And you could only have one child at that time, and they wanted boys. So they left her under a bridge. And maybe that's why she cried every lesson. I don't know. She could sing Motherless Child.
Yeah.
If it spoke to her.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I had not thought about it in that way.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, did you always know you wanted to be a performer?
Absolutely. Been performing.
Yeah.
Performing from day one. They say my brother and I we put on skits, and that's the time when people were locking and break dancing. And we would do that for the family reunion, and we put on plays, and we just entertain the family, and they'd sit there and watch us. Can you believe it? But I'm sure you did the same thing. I'm sure you and Grace did the same thing. Did you all do the same thing?
We had, we would have these these neighborhood performances where we would write up a little program and then invite all the neighborhood parents and dance and sing and put on little performances.
There's a kinship here. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Absolutely. How is your performance preparation, your performance experience? How has that changed from when through your life? How has that changed from when you were a kid to when you were a college student to early in your career to now?
It's still as undisciplined as it was when I was a child. I wish I could say that it was different. I wish I could say that I got up every morning at 10 o'clock and vocalized, and that no. I do all my work during the day, and at about 9 o'clock at night, I say, oh boy, I need to vocalize. I have to sing this weekend, and it's not going to be right if I don't do these exercises. So at 9 o'clock at night, I'm doing it at 10 and 11, and I'm wondering what the neighbors are thinking. And so it's as undisciplined. While I was teaching, though, after teaching all day, my voice was tired and I was tired. I would go home. After teaching, have dinner, 6 or 7 o'clock. I would take a nap. I would go to sleep. I'd get up at 3 in the morning, and then I'd practice 3 till about 5 or 6, and then I'd go back to bed and get up and be ready for my 10 o'clock lesson. Because I couldn't practice on a tired instrument, and so after teaching all day. And so this is what I needed to do, because quite often I would teach Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'd fly out Friday, do concerts either Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday matinee, possibly do an outreach or something, or teach a master class on Monday, because a lot of times when you're hired to go out and do a show, you have to do an educational outreach. I do that on Monday, fly back Monday evening, and teach at Northern on Tuesday.
Quite a schedule.
And that was my life.
Yeah.
But I was young and I could do it. When you're young, the voice will just work.
Yeah, for sure. What's inspiring you today in terms of the music that you make and what you're creating?
I'm really inspired by African American visual artists. And I've started collecting African American art. And what I love about it, and I was always a collector, but I didn't realize that I was a collector. I'd go to Brazil or Africa or whatever, and I was always bringing stuff back and having my friends hold vases and stuff, and that's when you could put stuff, you could take anything on the airplane. But so I saw an art exhibit at the Detroit Institute of Art called, what was it called? Detroit Collects. and they were bringing African American art from people's homes, and they had this wonderful exhibit. It made international news, and really blue chip artists, Beardens and Catlett's and Mayhews and all of that. And so I've started collecting. And what I like about visual art is that you work on it. They work on their art just like we work on every day. We practice and we sing and all of that, and they work. And when we finish our performance, it's gone, unless it's captured on tape or something like that, which would be, I guess, equivalent to them making a print or a lithograph of their piece. But their piece is still there. Ours is gone. And so to capture their piece and to have it and to be able to hang it and to look at it every day, you know, and not to have to you know, go to Spotify or whatever to hear it, and to see it, and to find something different, to recognize a different color and a different shade or a different brush stroke, or to say, what are they really saying? To see something in it daily, something that you had never seen before, is really, really wonderful. So I'm interested in doing a project where I sing African American folk songs, and it doesn't have to be limited to that, but I like to do something with African American visual artists on slides while I'm singing folk songs. So that is my new project that I'm kind of speaking into existence. Sure. Majesty of the Spiritual is still just getting it to go forward. That was a dream project. I did many solo spiritual recitals, but now I'm doing concerts with film of the composers speaking about their process and what brought them to the spiritual, and then having my friends there and our singing concert spirituals in duo form and trio form and solo form, and also having a community of singers on stage with me, like a leader Abent doing this concert. I just love it, and to present it, and, you know, as artists, to get people to buy the concert so we can go and do it. That's what I'm doing at this time in my life. And interviews with Zach, who would sing Great Day for me. And which is so interesting, talking about spirituals. As a kid, you didn't know Great Day was an African-American folk song. You didn't know the history about it. You loved the tune.
Yeah.
And you wanted to sing it.
Yeah.
And that's what you did. And you came down and sang it for me. How old were you, 9 or 10?
Yeah, something like that.
And you sang it for me on pitch with great love and joy, not even thinking about the difficulty of it. And that's what this thing is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got to find a clip of that. I don't know if somebody recorded that.
I'm sure Paul has a clip of it somewhere.
If he can find that, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, for
that
sure.
would be great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This is great. Yeah, I love talking with you, and honored to be here with you, and thank you for taking the time.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
And so this is just a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.